It feels like India is walking a tightrope right now. On one side, you've got these immense global pressures pushing and pulling. And on the other, some really complex challenges are brewing right here at home. So today, we're going to dive into this delicate balancing act and see what it tells us about the path ahead. I want to start with this line from the poet Sarveshwar Dale Saxena. It just really stuck with me because it perfectly frames what we're talking about today, right? In a world that seems so full of limitations and challenges, how does a nation find its way to a future of possibilities? So that's the big question. How is India answering that? We're going to explore this by looking at its diplomatic tightrope walk, some landmark legal decisions, and even a few surprising controversies on the home front, just to get a sense of the choices being made as we speak. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start out on the world stage with a major test of India's foreign policy. Then we're going to bring it back home to look at a really crucial Supreme Court ruling on civil liberties. From there, we'll dive into some, unexpected domestic upheavals. And finally, we'll try to piece it all together and ask, what's the path forward? All right, let's kick things off with a high-stakes world of foreign policy. Right now, India is facing a huge test in a world that's getting more and more polarized. And believe me, every single move has to be a careful balancing act. Let's just take the recent crisis in Venezuela. It has basically drawn a line in the sand, splitting the world into two camps. You've got countries like China and Russia on one side, strongly condemning U.S. actions. Then, on the other side, you've got Western powers like Germany and France, who are staying quiet on that front. So, with the world divided like this, the big question is, where does India fit in? Well, India chose to walk right down the middle. This official statement is a masterclass in neutrality. It expresses concern, it calls for dialogue, but it very, very carefully avoids picking a side. This is classic Indian foreign policy, what they call multi-alignment, basically a strategy to engage with everyone rather than get locked into one single camp. But, of course, playing it safe like this has drawn a lot of criticism. At home, opposition leaders were asking if India had forgotten its own history. And internationally, some analysts were arguing that by not taking a stand, India is risking its position as a leader of the global South. The real worry here is that these super careful, non-committal statements are becoming the new normal, and that could make India's voice less and less relevant on the world stage. And hey, just when you thought that balancing act couldn't get any trickier, a whole new pressure point has popped up from let's just say an unexpected source, former U.S. President Donald Trump. So here you see this classic carrot and stick approach. In one breath, he's praising Prime Minister Modi, calling him a good person. But then, in the very next breath, he drops this thinly veiled threat. He's claiming India's already cutting back on Russian oil to make him happy, but he's also hinting that if those cuts don't continue, tariffs could be coming. And this is not some empty threat. This number, 500%, is tied to a proposed U.S. bill. It would allow for a tariff of up to 500% on countries buying Russian oil and uranium. So you can see this puts India in an incredibly tough spot. You're forced to choose between your energy security and your historic ties with Russia on one side and your critical partnership with the U.S. on the other. This theme of navigating really difficult choices doesn't just stop at the border. Let's shift from the global stage to a landmark legal case happening right here at home. We're going to look at a recent Supreme Court judgment that involves the Delhi riots and the very stringent anti-terror law, the UAPA. So what happened? Well, the Supreme Court came back with a split decision. Out of the 7 accused in this specific case, 2 activists, Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam, were denied bail. But the other 5 were actually granted bail. So this wasn't a blanket ruling at all. The court was clearly looking at each person's case individually. So you might be asking, why the different outcomes? Well, for Khalid and Imam, the court said that the evidence suggested they were deeply involved in the planning and mobilization of the whole thing. The court felt their alleged actions were serious enough to disrupt essential services and even pose a threat to the country's economic security. So, given how complex it all was, no bail for. But for the other 5, the court's thinking was different. It basically concluded that keeping them in jail wasn't necessary for the trial to move forward. Now, the court was very, very clear. Granting bail doesn't mean they're innocent, and it doesn't weaken the case against them. It was about their constitutional rights, and believe me, that bail came with some very strict conditions attached. And really, the court's own words sum up the whole legal dilemma perfectly. They're saying, look, individual liberty is absolutely crucial, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You have to weigh it against the security of the entire community and the need to have a fair trial. It's all a delicate balance.
All right, let's switch gears a bit and turn to the domestic front, where challenges can be just as complex and sometimes, honestly, just plain unpredictable. We've got two really different stories that kind of highlight this.
Okay, first up, you have to hear about this truly bizarre bureaucratic blunder in Madhya Pradesh. An official order goes out to arrange security for a protest. Pretty standard stuff, right? Well, somehow, the official document itself ended up including the protest's own anti-government talking points, and it even quoted a controversial remark from a cabinet minister. The letter went viral, you can imagine the embarrassment, and the official who sent it out was suspended almost immediately. Just a wild story. And then there's the story of how a simple sporting issue just completely spiraled into a diplomatic spat. So it starts when a Bangladeshi cricketer is removed from his IPL team. This set off a massive public backlash in Bangladesh. But things escalated fast. The government there banned the IPL broadcast. Then, their cricket board announced it wouldn't send its team to India for the T20 World Cup. It's just a crazy reminder of how quickly cultural issues can blow up and affect relations between neighbors.
So, after looking at all these different challenges, from global diplomacy to local governance, we come right back to our main question. What is the path ahead?
As we've seen, India is really standing at a crossroads, defined by all these different tensions. In foreign policy, it's that constant tug of war between leading the global south and keeping strong ties with the West. In national security, it's that age-old debate between individual freedom and state security. And at home, it's about managing everything from clumsy mistakes to super sensitive flare-ups with your neighbors. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Surrounded by all these complicated challenges, these limitations, the path forward is anything but simple. I think the real question is, how will India navigate all these tensions to shape its own future of possibilities? What do you think that future will look like? Thanks for watching.